Welcome to the Sage Advice Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and today's episode is cut from another podcast of which I am the co-host, The Soul of Enterprise, which is also sponsored by Sage. The Soul of Enterprise is dedicated to belief that business has a spiritual, though not necessarily religious, component. I hope you enjoy this excerpt. If you do, please visit www.thesoulofenterprise.com for more.
I'm just going to admit right now, I have no clue.
I don't either.
I have no idea.
So the whole thing, when do things get back to normal? Well, as Rabbi Lapin pointed out, Hebrew has no word for normal, just like it has no word for leadership. Mm-hmm. And what he always says about the Hebrew language is, if the word's not in there, then it's not needed. It's not necessary. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, this pandemic, it's going to subside. We're going to go back to work. Schools are going to reopen. As the economy will probably bounce back with a roar when it's unleashed. I think the homeschooling movement and what's going to happen with the universities reevaluating their value propositions, that's going to be really interesting. But he said it's the wrong question. When will we return to normal? He says the right question is, when shall we live our lives to the fullest?
That is a great question. And I will just harken back to something that I talked about when Howard Hansen was on the show, and that is that men lose their mind in herds, but recover them only one by one.
Yes, I heard that.
And I think that is exactly what is going to happen. I think there is a huge herd mentality with this, and there's lots of fear, some of it warranted, some of it not so warranted. And it's going to take a long, long time for us to get this. I don't know but have you had this experience yet, Ron, with you're watching something on television that was clearly created pre-COVID? And you're like, you guys are too close together.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I look at a full airplane and go, what? No middle seat empty? What's going on?
Yeah, what's wrong with these people? Yeah. And it's going to, and I think the impact on business is going to be really long too. I was talking with my Sage colleague on the Sage Advice podcast that I do with Rachel Fish, she out of Canada, and we were talking about this. It's like getting through, PPP, and they have an acronym for it up there in Canada. Mm-hmm. It says that's step 1 of a 27-step process that is going to take into the next decade to fully unravel. I think it was you that told me, isn't it true that there's still not cases adjudicated from the 1986 tax cuts?
Oh, probably. I'm sure.
So you can only imagine that there's going to be work in certainly the accounting profession, accounting and bookkeeping profession, but just across the entirety of the industry with regard to unraveling what happened with all of these programs that were put in place across the globe. Not to mention, can people fully get back to their actual jobs? And by that, I don't mean going to work, because as we learned from Jody Thompson a long time ago, work is a thing you do, not a place you go. But I still think that there's been a limitation on what's happening. I don't think we're going to see potentially conferences return for 3 to 5 years the way that they used to be.
Yeah, that's very possible. I think there's 4 things you can say about what's going on. One is, I think that apparently this strain of COVID that we have here in the U.S. is extremely contagious. Remember, Ed, when we used to talk about, well, when it starts getting hotter, this thing will lose some of its momentum. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. These strains in Europe and the U.S. seem to have, they say they have an S spike in them that makes them roughly 10 times as infectious as the strain that was originally in Asia. And I think the second thing you can say is the death rate for those who catch this virus is low, but it still can add up to a significant loss of life, right? I mean, even if you go with the CDC's current estimates of 0.6 to 0.7 mortality. And I've seen numbers even lower, but whatever. We've got 252 million Americans over the age of 18. If half of those come down with this at a 0.2% fatality rate, that's still 252,000 deaths. And I think the third thing you can say is, and this is a gamble, a vaccine is coming probably faster than anyone would have predicted. I'm still, I got my fingers crossed, but I'm really skeptical about this. But there seems to be incredible progress. They've completed stage 2 trials on a few of these, and now they're in stage 3, which means a bigger human population. Is one, I think the Oxford's going to be 30,000 people, and they've lined up the manufacturing. They say they're going to have 300 million doses, and one of these vaccines is going to be given away to Americans. So that's going to be really interesting. But I think, like you were saying, Ed, I think the fourth assumption we can make about this is this battle's not over, and it's certainly going to last till the end of the year and probably for several more years.
For more sage advice, visit and subscribe at sageadvicepodcast.com.